Hey folks, this is Aleki and you're watching Stationeers for Beginners. The resources on your starter lander will be sufficient for bare minimum survival in your first few days, but to progress beyond that, you will need to acquire resources and manufacture a lot of additional items. In this video, we're going to talk about navigation and mining. Mining is your only way in the early game to get additional resources, but to mine you have to head out from the base, and before you do that, you need to know how to get back to it. It may feel like it's easy to navigate the world by simply remembering that your base is next to this one tall mountain or that low hill over there. However, the world is made up of many mountains and hills, and before long many will look the same. There are no trees or ruins or other landmarks in your world in Stationeers, and it is not hard to get lost if you try to navigate using only geographical features as your points of reference. The safest way to navigate, and the one that I recommend to you if you are a beginner, is to use the tracking beacon and the handheld tablet. On your lander, in the red residential supplies crate, you'll find the tracking beacon with an included small battery cell. In your jetpack, you start with the handheld tablet and the tracker cartridge for it. Grab the tracking beacon, use T to place it on the ground, and click its body to turn it on. Next, grab your tablet and insert the tracker cartridge into its cartridge slot. When you turn it on by pressing O or right-clicking, you will see an arrow and the distance to the beacon. If later on you have more than one beacon, you can select which one it's tracking by using your scroll wheel. According to the wiki, a small battery should last about 30 minutes. However, based on my latest testing, it seems to last about an hour and 30 minutes. Until you determine what is the case for your game, I suggest erring on the side of caution and not expecting it to last more than 30 minutes. In a cold environment, the battery will also drain faster, which will matter if you're playing on Europa. So long as you remember to turn on the beacon and its battery lasts, this is by far the most reliable way to navigate back to your base. You do not want to expend electricity on the beacon or carry the tablet. You can use your compass heading to navigate. Your compass display is in the bottom right of your screen to the left of your character's portrait and shows your direction in degrees from 0 to 360. 0 represents north, 90 is east, 180 is south, and 270 is west. Pick a compass heading and follow it closely. With this method, the more you deviate and the further you go, the more your arrival will be inexact. In my case, I picked a heading of 200 degrees, and when I'm ready to get back, I will either add 180 or subtract 180, whichever gives me a number between 0 and 360. So for my heading of 200, I will subtract 180, and my return heading will be 20 degrees. If I turn back to that heading, I should arrive back at my base. The more you deviate from your heading, either going away or coming back, or straying to the sides to mine, the more your return is going to be thrown off as well. The game has a limited render distance, so you could run right past your base and not even see it if you deviated too much. Lights on your base, like those from a power controller or battery, can help locate it, especially in the dark, but even lights have a limited render range. The third way to navigate is to create your own landmarks. In that same red consumables crate, you'll find a stack of flags, or you can use frames to create landmarks. Head over to the top of a hill and plant your landmark. Flags have to be planted into the ground, but the frame could even be floated up in the sky. Your artificial landmarks will be subject to the same render range. As I move away from my frame and flag, they will disappear. Unfortunately, flags, even though they're meant for navigation, do not have a larger render range than other structures. I do not recommend this navigation method as to be your primary one. Night and the limited render distance will make it unreliable and unsafe. But sprinkling a few of these landmarks on the hills around your base can be the difference between dying and making your way home if your beacon runs out of juice, or if you are thrown off your compass heading by a little bit. In your jetpack, you will start out with a mining belt. It can be placed in the belt slot, swapping it for your tool belt. Inside the mining belt, you will find a mining drill, a pickaxe, and 8 empty slots that can only accept ore. When you are mining, any ore you find will attempt to be placed in one of these 8 slots if one is available. The mining drill is powered by a battery and requires electrical power in order to function. The pickaxe is intended as an emergency mining tool. It is slower than the mining drill, but should you find yourself in a hole without any battery left in your drill, you could use the pickaxe to dig yourself out. To use the mining drill, you will need to turn it on by pressing O or right-clicking and locate a deposit of ore. Then, hold left-click and you will dig into the ground and collect any ore that you are encountering. Your mining drill also has a secondary mode. You can access it by clicking Set Flatten in its Properties window. When you start mining in this mode, the tool will pick the height of the terrain and will flatten all other terrain to the same height. This is not really useful for mining, but it is useful for flattening some ground for building structures. Next, let's see what ores you can find in Stationeers. I will start with the ones most important to you in the early game, and after that we can look at the ones more useful in the late game and at the ices. Iron has a brown metallic look with inlaid silver nuggets. It is the primary structural material, whether used directly or as part of the steel alloy. You will need large amounts of it throughout the game, but in the early phases, it is critical for creating iron sheets, frames, walls, and most machines and devices. Copper has a greenish metallic appearance with inlaid copper veins. It is used mostly in electrical and electronic devices, and it is essential for creating additional cables. Gold has a metallic gray appearance with gold nuggets inlaid into it. It is mined in smaller amounts than other metals, but it is also used in smaller quantities. Many electronic devices will require gold, and together with silver, it will let you make electrum alloy once you have a furnace. Silicon has a dull, dirty white appearance. It will allow you to make your first water bottle filler, which is essential for replenishing your drinking water. It is also used to make glass and plastic sheets and in the making of insulated pipes later on. Coal has a dull, dark gray to black appearance, which makes it stand out from other ores. It is used as fuel for the solid generator that you start with, and once you have a furnace, combined with iron to make steel. The 5 ores I showed you so far are the ones that you need to be on the lookout on your first mining trip. My goal when I first go out mining in a new game is to acquire at least 50 iron, 10 gold, 40 copper, 10 silicon, and some coal. But the more the better, especially when it comes to the first 3. Let me know if you agree with this list, or share your own shopping list for your first mining trip in the comments below. The next 3 metals will come into play when you get your furnace built. They have a few direct uses, so setting aside a small amount can be good, but you will mainly use them in making mid-game alloys. All of these tend to be rare, though how hard something is to find in Stationeers is greatly dependent on your luck and a random generation. I've had games where I couldn't find nickel for days, and others where there was plenty of it right by my starting point. Silver has a metallic dark gray appearance, with silver nuggets embedded in it. It is used together with gold to make the alloy electrum, as well as in a few direct recipes. Lead is a mix of dull black and white. Its main use is making solder, which is used in many electronics. Nickel is pitted, rough, and reddish brown. Its main use is making the mid-game alloys Invar and Constantan. Cobalt has a distinctive pitted blue appearance. As far as I know, it has no early game uses, but it is significant in late game alloys and the making of medical pills. Uranium is green and banded and stands out very well, which is good because you'll probably ignore it entirely. It can be used to off-gas pollutant, but to my knowledge it has no other use. Despite what common sense might prompt you to expect, not even the late-game nuclear batteries use uranium. Next up, let's look at the 4 ices found in Stationeers. They are mined the same way as other ores, and they too will go in your mining belt if it's equipped. Unlike other ores, you cannot transport them in your hands or backpack, as any sunlight or atmospheric heat will quickly melt them. When melted, their component gases will be released around you, potentially tainting the atmosphere of your base, or worse, catching fire. Oxite Ice is a matte light blue, and one of the two most important ices for your early survival. When melted, oxide releases oxygen and nitrogen in a 9:1 proportion. With filtration, it will be a main source of oxygen for your suit, and can be melted as is to create or replenish your base's atmosphere. Though remember, ice is really damn cold. The ice labeled simply ice is water ice. It is pure white, and at first you may confuse it for silicon at a distance. It melts into water and nitrogen. But don't drop this inside your base because you'll end up with a very foggy room that you will later have to clean up. You will want an ice crusher and bottle filler in order to satisfy your thirst with it. Volatile ice is easy to spot from afar thanks to its distinctive bright pink color. Melts into volatiles, which are used to make fuel mix like the one used by your welding torch. Be careful not to accidentally melt this inside your base, as even a little volatiles can be ignited into a base-destroying inferno by the sparks of your autolathe or any other fire source. Nitrice has a layered appearance, and it is a pale mint green color. It is by far the least useful ice to you in the beginning of the game, as it melts into nitrogen and nitrous oxide. Aside from certain plants, there currently is no specific need for nitrogen. Your character is perfectly happy and healthy, breathing a pure oxygen atmosphere. And in fact, adding any nitrogen to your suit is a really bad idea. Without proper filtering, it will build up in your helmet and eventually suffocate your character. Nitrous oxide is a great oxidizer that can create a more efficient fuel mix than oxygen. However, it is hard to work with due to its propensity to condense easily, and it's not something I recommend you mess with until you have a really firm grasp on the intricacies of gases and Stationeers. Now that you know how to mine, let's head back to our arc furnace and see about smelting all that ore. The arc furnace has an input port on the front and an output port on the back. Place the ore that you want to smelt in the input port, then press the button to the right. That will begin the smelting process. The tooltip on the button indicates how much ore there is left to smelt. Different ores take a different time to smelt. Iron is pretty fast, while gold is quite slow. When smelting, regardless of what furnace or ore you use, you will always receive 1 gram of bar for each unit of ore that is processed. You can interrupt the smelting job by pressing the button again. Whatever ore was processed will be ejected out the back in bar form, and the unprocessed ore will be found in the input slot. Interrupting the process early will not lose you any of the materials. You can even stick ice in the arc furnace, though doing so is only gonna melt it into the atmosphere. And definitely don't stick any volatile ice, unless you want a very large explosion. I mentioned earlier about how you can use Oxite Ice to quickly fill your base with a breathable atmosphere. I have here a small test room which has been completely vacuumed out. It is 5 grid cubes large, 1 in the airlock and 4 more in this small room. I found that about 5 pieces of Oxite Ice per grid cube will be sufficient to establish a breathable atmosphere. So, for my 5 cube room, I'm gonna grab 25 pieces of oxide and hold them in my hand. Even in the vacuumed room, the sun will quickly melt them. Now, the room has an atmosphere of about 35 kilopascals, which is 90% oxygen. It starts out at 0 degrees Celsius, although in my case the sun is quickly heating it up. And I can open my helmet, and my character will be happy to breathe this environment without any lung damage. Give the video a thumbs up if you found it useful to let the algorithm know to show you more like this. And subscribe and click the bell icon to get a notification when I put out the next one.